You're not a
Hey,
good
friend.
bartender.
We're live.
Not a good one.
We're live. Whenever you're ready to call to order.
Okay, hang on, I'm gonna go grab my water.
Oh, Don, Mayor, would you give me one also, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Everybody else has one?
Thank you. Is everybody good? Yeah? Ready to go?
All right,
Yeah, go ahead.
then I would like to call to order the Finance Committee meeting of Tuesday, November 16th, 2021 at 6:13. Angela, you got the budget to us. This is through the end of October, correct?
Correct.
All right, is there some specific things that you would like to highlight with our
What,
department heads here?
no, yeah, I mean, if you would like me to start, I'm sorry, I'm just messing around trying to get our, chat up.
That's okay.
Been a little bit touchy today. Bear with me. I think the chat will come soon. And maybe,
What I will say while Angela's doing that is it still seems that we are on track to be ending the year on a positive note, staying in the black, albeit only $42,500, but it's still on the right side. And I believe a lot of that money, I know Angela was talking about on Dunham Road, was paid out on November 1st or 2nd, so that's still.
right,
kind of
November will be
showing-
the telling month for everything Dunham to wrap up roughly. I might have one retainage payment of $108,000, but at the bottom of your general fund, or part of the report, you'll see I detailed out some things, the county monies in the bank, Maple payments, and there's one more out to Maple that is newly outstanding. Actually, I don't even know if I emailed it today, for their final bill. So that's just to give a rough estimate to show that when November closes, we will be back in the black. I'm not promising that that means the year's gonna end at $500,000 to the black, but yes, we'll definitely be out of the red for that. So, I have met with department heads. The rec department, the mayor actually talked to Natalie. Her budget's not likely to change much. She's been on track all year with her events. COVID's kept us the last couple years on track with the special events and things like that. Parker program stayed within range. We stayed within salary range for seasonal for the Parker counselors. So her budget's not likely to change for next year, and she didn't have any big wish list items or needs. So moving on to, we can start with police. And we have our department heads here in case I forget anything or if they want to add to it since they've spoken to me. Stan and I did have a discussion before he had gone on vacation, so a couple weeks ago. And the necessities are moderate even in the police department. So we've got, as far as physical things needed, we need 2 workstations for our booking area. That's about $3,300. That's a necessity in my opinion. The dispatch server needs to be replaced pretty desperately, and that's almost $11,000, and that's a necessity. Stan and I are gonna talk about printer, copier, fax things. Right now we own our copiers, but we do pay monthly, and they use color on their side for running things for court and for tickets and jackets, and we have black and white on our side. But if that would probably be something I would look at leasing. And then, you know, just making sure that we keep in mind that their guns are 10 years old. So there's a buyback program out there that obviously Stan and probably Mike Gervasi, if I had to guess, Sergeant Gervasi, would look into. So we will need to maybe replace our guns. We will have a radio payment due, as we know that was part of the budget. You know, I'll budget that for this year because when we financed those last year, we knew our next payment would be due this year. Moderate amount for training, and then as far as cruisers, 2's on the wish list, and Stan knows that I will try for 1. They've been getting cars pretty pretty regularly since I've been here the last 4 years. So hopefully, one to start will do. And then basically, Stan, if you want to talk about your staffing needs, I know he's interested in having some more part-timers.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. We have currently 4 part-timers, and across the nation, police officers are retiring and they're doing lateral moves. I don't know if you've seen TV lately. I think it was Phoenix, Arizona was advertising on Channel 8 for recruiting. So Bedford, Maple, Garfield, even Solon, they're doing laterals. So we're losing officers to other departments. Our officers get 36 hours a week, our part-timers, and, thanks to council that with the insurance and that, so it kept them here and that, but that's the problem we're facing. I'd like to at least put on 3 part-timers. With the police department, it takes an average of 16 weeks of training that they are out in a cruiser with an FTO, which is not a lot of time. And then once they get out on the road, they have, they're riding by themselves, and it takes them a time to adjust. And so you're talking at least a good year from the start till the end, to get the officer on his own and comfortable out there. The cruisers, wish list is for 2, but if I can get 1, we can make do with it. At least if we get 1 every year, we can replace them. And what I try to do is the cars that we retire, keep them, put them as an auxiliary or as a spare vehicle. Recently, we had 3 new cars down, and actually 7417 we got last year, Angela,
Yes, I believe so.
and
2020.
it's been in the Ford, Liberty Ford in Aurora for about 5 weeks now, because they're unable to get the parts for the engine due to COVID, they're saying. I guess there's like 4 or 5 Ford dealerships in the country that has this part, but they won't part with it. So what they're trying to do is put pressure on Detroit, so when it comes off the line, they'll be able to get that part and then ship it over to Liberty. But in the meantime, the car's all picked apart. So now it's putting more mileage on the cruisers that we have in service. But hopefully, we'll get it back in the next week or 2.
Mr. Mayor,
Well,
talking about the cruisers.
go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, Jennifer as chairman was.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought we were at the council meeting. I'm already ahead, I
It
apologize.
doesn't matter.
Sorry,
Stop
sorry,
time
Madam
traveling.
Chair, I apologize.
Although
I time warped there for a second. Madam Chair.
Yes.
Stan is talking about the cruisers. We do pay for the cruisers out of the court fund. Is that not correct? Or most of the cruisers?
Yes.
So how are we doing in that court fund relative to?
We did have a cruiser we just picked up that we
Yeah.
need to pay for this year, so.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, can you just report?
While they're looking that up, Chief, talking about the cruisers, is there any other type of vehicle? I realize that the SUVs are the most practical for the village, but are we married to Ford anymore? Is there another one out there that's possibly better? I do know that there's a shortage problem also. My brother was laid off of Ford for 2 weeks, due to parts not coming in, and they had so many vehicles just sitting. But I'm just asking if there's
I
something
know
else.
other cities had gone to Dodge, and they were having problems with that. Oakwood switched over to Fords. We did look at the Chevy Tahoe, which Tim Lowry has them in stock and that. But just, those are so big, with the long driveways and having the back, even though they have the cameras and that. Bedford has a couple of them, they like them, but, we just thought they were too big for Walton Hills. and we,
Size.
You know, patrol and use them for.
Do you think there's any benefit at all to having, like one of the Chargers instead, or are those just too small for us and not practical here?
Well, in the wintertime and that with the hills we have, you know, us responding to calls, it does benefit us having, you know, an SUV. Plus, we
All-wheel
all-
drive.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Sure.
putting all our tactical gear in there, and,
Yeah.
you know, so there's a lot of room.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of equipment in there
Mhm.
and stuff that, yeah, that you guys have and you carry.
Chief, the three cars that were down, this is the same part? I mean, the
No,
same thing
no,
wrong,
they were
three
three different problems.
Chief, I was also curious, was there any wish list, were you making any consideration of any full-time employees then, like adding eventually, or just the part-time employees right now?
For right now, part-time, like I said, you know, there's two part-time officers that might be going to other departments full-time. We lost Brianna in August, and she got full-time at, Brooklyn. So, like I said, you know, it does take a lot of time, you know, to go through the program and that, and actually money and that, you know, uniforms and vest and duty belt and everything. So there is a big cost to, you know, put somebody on part-time or full-time, so. Hopefully, like I said, I'd at least like to get the rate put on, you know, come first of the year.
Angela, excuse me, refresh my memory. What's the cost, or chief, of a new cruiser again? What was
About
the?
$50,000, because
That's-
that's about 35 for the cruiser,
Right.
and then we have to outfit it.
I know
You
you
have
have
to
to outfit it. I thought it was about 50. I was
Yeah.
just trying to jog my memory. Okay.
Correct. And Brian, I'm gonna have to look and just pull figures from which funds, because when I actually pay for a cruiser, it comes out of its own vehicle fund, so I gotta piece together all the court stuff to see what goes into that.
Okay.
Chief, one other question I had was, I know that Angela had listed the things, and I was trying to jot everything down, but, or Angela, you might be able to answer this. What would the cost be for, any more of the new radios that we had? So,
Oh, that would be a Shannon question, because I don't know how, if we can, you know, like an add-on to
You're
those.
talking about portables?
yes.
They're around, I think, $3,500 each.
Yeah.
For portable.
Yeah.
Not cheap.
Okay. Our officers currently take home their portables with them? Or do they all remain?
Because of the
here?
grant at the time, we only have,
We ordered what we could,
15
yes.
officers, so that's all we were able to get on our grant.
Mhm.
What we are going to do, hopefully by the end of the month, they'll start the process of installing the radios in dispatch. And for right now, we'll have to share them. Because auxiliaries will use them, our full-time and part-time will use them. So I decided that, you know, either we all have our own or we all have to share.
Mhm.
Same thing, you know, with tasers and body cameras, those are all shared, which a lot of departments do.
So how many extra radios would we need if they had, if everyone had their own?
What would be the reason they'd need their own, I guess, is my question.
Bullet.
What would be the reason that everyone would need their own?
There is no reason. It's more of a, you know, convenience that, you know, they take it home and they bring it in. And, I mean, it takes a matter of seconds to, you know, they're downstairs, you know, reading their
Okay.
email to grab a portable radio and log it with dispatch or log it in the book that they took whatever radio with them.
Right, and we would have no reason to send radios home with auxiliaries. So we're talking 3 part-time people maybe that don't have their own? How many don't have their own? I mean, like, on a daily, because, or is anybody not taking them home at all, or just leaving them?
Currently, everybody has their own. We've had them for, I don't know, 15 years, 20 years maybe. So
Right, but for the new system.
This was the old, but with the new and that, like I said, there's not enough for everybody.
So even full-timers are not taking them home?
Right, I decided that, you know, we were, either we share them or
Yep.
we, get individuals, so until, and actually with the grant, we got a cradle of 6 radios, the charging system, where in the past, they were individual charging units and that, so that's why we're not able to do it right now.
Thanks.
So what is the total number that we have compared to officers of the new portable radios?
There is 15 radios.
And the total number?
We'd have to get extra chargers,
Mhm.
but, you know, until we get all the bugs worked out in that, you know, we're just gonna share them.
See, I know what it's like sharing equipment in the EMS world. And I know that I take care of my equipment, but somebody, and I'm not saying that any of our officers here would, you know, beat up the equipment or anything like that, but not everybody takes care of their equipment the same way. So that's where I'm looking at it from.
We share the, we share the tasers and the body cameras. We've never had any problems with, you know,
Right.
officers not taking care of the equipment
Sure.
because it's not their own or issued to them.
All right, great, thank you.
Council Chair, Helen, I just had a quick question. This is not just for Chief Jaworski, but for all of the departments. You know, Angela, when in your introductory remarks, you read off some items, and then Chief talked about potentially 3 part-timers and 2 cars. And I know tonight is just our our first round of discussions. Can we anticipate a summary document that, you know, with everything?
Your summary document's gonna be the budget that I prepare, and I can put notes to it certainly, but having met with department heads and knowing where we're at, cause
Right.
that's my, daily life here, I kinda will know what we can probably put in there.
Okay, so
you
my
know.
question,
But yeah,
my question is, because you've met with them, so what I'm asking is,
well, your
can that-
52 is your summary doc, like, we're gonna start with that, right? So we're on track so far for budget, pretty much in most areas on here for the
So
year.
all of the itemization of whether it's chargers, the cost of 3 part-timers, if that's to be part of the budget, the cruisers with outfitting, all of those details, we're gonna find that in here? That's what I'm asking.
You will when I prepare
Is there a
you
way
a
to
budget.
summarize for the 2022 budget, this is what the new budget items are for the police department and their anticipated
When we
costs,
go
and
through
as
the
well as
budget
other
itself,
departments.
yes, we can do that. I will
It
make
makes it a lot
notes
simpler for
to say,
council.
here's regular everyday stuff, like our salaries, here's wish list stuff that came up, or necessities, here's where I put in the 10,000 for the server. I'll detail that out for all of you. Yes,
Did that answer your question?
yeah, and we can detail it, because when you see a budget, as you know, you see a budget based on, here's police, and it's, most of it's gonna be like salaries, overhead. Then it's gonna be other components, like, fire contract, things like that are gonna fall into like that whole category for safety, let's put it that way. So I will detail out for you, because you're gonna see something like this, then you're gonna see the actual budget as it looks in legislation, the way we passed it, which is a much more condensed version. But when we go through what will look similar to the 52, how we budgeted last year, I will detail out for everyone, hey, here's what Stan asked for, and here's where I put it in the budget. Or I couldn't put it in the budget, so it's not in the budget.
I guess
That's exactly what will happen.
Yeah, I guess my thoughts were, like, for the record, this is real simple to read. We know, if we're talking about banquet hall, what these projected costs, all of that, just then similarly, before it actually goes into a budget document, just a summary document, so it's easy to read what these
Do
potential.
you want a summary of the entire list of what's requested, or a summary of what I feel is gonna be able to get put in the budget? You
Well-
just tell me, it doesn't matter, I could do either.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure where the decision gets made, if the
Yeah.
departments, if
The
the departments.
decision gets made with the departments and the fiscal officer based on what I think we can afford, and then you guys with where you see I have us landing, right? If I say, hey, let's cram all this stuff everybody needs into the budget, but it's gonna put us way in the red, well, then you're gonna probably come back and say, ooh, let's maybe take some of that out.
Yeah,
So
but there may
that, the
be.
budget process starts with the department heads and
Got
me.
it. Got it.
And
But-
then, in this discussion, which is why I wanted to have this committee
Right,
meeting.
but as a way of council have an opportunity to help with the prioritization of what will eventually be authorized. We need to know what's going on in safety, what's going on in rec,
So we
what's
can
going
do
on in
that for
service,
you, but you
in
gotta
order to
also,
make intelligent, for us to
Absolutely.
provide intelligent input.
we can do that, but everybody needs to please remember that department heads, and myself included, we have to prioritize. So we may feel like we need 10 new police officers, but we also need 2 dump trucks on the service side of things. That's kind of more of an internal, and then a recommendation from council, I guess, is what I'm saying. So yeah, but you'll have the info. I'm gonna spell it out more than it's ever been spelled out in the past, let's put it that way, just as I have been all year. I will get that for you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I see where Councilman Whedon is going, and I agree with him in that I do understand the conversation between the fiscal officer and the department heads. But it also helps us with raw data. We are the ultimate decision makers of the fiscal spending of the village. And we may have, very respectfully, Angela, we may have a different direction than you may think, well, I'm not gonna put this in, but we may decide to go in a different direction. So it may help us seeing the raw information and going from there. And I fully understand and respect what you're saying. But it would, and it would help me too, seeing the raw information of what is being asked for, what's on the horizon, and then working with that also. And then your input, because that's valuable also, as to, you're seeing the global, as you're putting it in the computer of, they asked for this, but we decided this because of this, blah, blah, blah. But again, we may have a different direction, and we may say, no, go ahead and order it. We're gonna give him a stay in a car, and we're gonna take the dump truck away from Rob.
It's not even funny to
Rob
joke
had
about. It's
absolutely
happened before.
no response to that. But,
You said it's been there, done that.
So yes.
We talked about
I
that,
will
right,
detail-
Rob? That's what I'm not saying, but
I will-
I'll give my little,
I'll
But,
detail out for
thing in the middle.
everyone
yeah, thank you.
the big ticket items that have been asked for. If we say, hey, we're going into next year's budget, these are the things that need to be addressed, I will detail that out for you, for both departments. As I said, Rec's not gonna have anything jumping out of the curtains at us right now. There's nothing special she needs. And then from there, I will say, hey, here's where I'm trying to fit it in, or here's what I'm trying to do with it.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
As we're going through this also, do you see, Angela, as far as revenues, business revenues for next year? And I know you probably didn't plug your crystal ball in today, but as far as overall general revenues, how are they looking for next year? Do you see anything on the horizon that we should be considering now? Because we have, we're talking $42,000 in the black right now. And we have employee payroll increases for next year. We have employee insurance increases for next year. Village insurance increase for next year. And these are thousands and thousands of dollars. I'm sure the fire, when is the fire contract up? That's coming up, isn't it?
It was a 10-year contract.
10-year
It's a
contract.
10-year, but
That
it's
was
increased, it's increasing.
voted
It goes up by a 2% each year.
Yeah.
Or 1%.
That's not until 27, I believe.
Yeah, that's right, we did sign the 10-year. But we have all those increases, so generally those increases, the employee increase is probably gonna be the biggest.
So the employee
Chunk of that.
increase is something we need to discuss, actually.
Exactly, so,
Obviously.
so how do those, something's gotta, in the give and take, something's gotta, if we're putting more money in, something's gotta come out somewhere else in order to keep us in the black, unless we're getting more revenue.
So
And that's
to
why I'm
answer your
asking you about the
question,
revenue.
so that we have time to get Rob up here too, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't foresee anything new on the horizon. I don't foresee our revenues going any higher than they currently are. we're pretty much on par with income tax. Camera revenue's over, but again, I can't budget to that. I have to
Right.
budget modestly, because it could be yanked at any time. So there's nothing, you know, like no pot of gold out there where I'm like, ooh, we can count on this. The only thing I can say, and I'll throw this recommendation out right now, having talked with Stan and Rob, having watched many, many webinars and reading many of the guidance pieces for the money we receive from the government, the ARPA funds, I'm going to suggest, you know, we got 118,000 and change this year, and we'll get the same thing pretty close to the same time next year. I'm gonna suggest that those go to vehicles. We can, in fact, even though everything was meant to be super COVID specific this time, they claimed they opened it up. It did, the services we provide to the village in terms of safety, in terms of plowing, dump trucks, police vehicles, I believe that's where we need to go with the money. And when we get to Rob's, I'll address dump trucks. But so that's my recommendation, that money, even though, you know, because it's not gonna get us an HVAC system, you know, a roof wouldn't have been covered because that's not COVID related. So, you know, it's gonna be my recommendation that go toward vehicles, because that's a service we provide to the village, so that's a legitimate cost, okay? But yeah, I don't have any other fantastic things to tell you on the revenue side. I think that we've been holding our own, thankfully. So, the only other thing is that could potentially happen, is if things go south with the lawsuits on the income tax side of the world, and it is determined that people can now take their money and go pay it to their home city instead, or if they live in a township, keep it, that could bite us. We're all hoping that doesn't happen. I have not had one refund request. I had people call last year about refunds because they were working at home at the time, because lawsuits were still going on. I tell them, and my cohorts in the tax field tell them, we're gonna sit on it till these lawsuits are over, or we have to sit on it till the end of the year anyway, until we get the reconciliation of the withholding. And obviously, if you're in a township, you benefit. If you're in another city, we're also gonna tell your home city that now we gave you money back, so you're gonna owe them. So that's kind of curbed people asking as far as our people. If anything, we've picked up a couple people working from home that work for software companies and stuff. That would be the only other thing that could make things go south, but yeah. So that's where we're at. We're gonna kind of be working off of almost our same figures we did last year, really.
Really, yeah.
Yeah.
The only other thing I would ask Chief from you is if you have a 5-year plan, and Rob, I would ask the same thing, like looking ahead, not right now, and obviously not tonight, but if you can come up with things that you're going to be looking for in the next 5 years. Is it going to be more vehicles? Is it going to be full-time? Do we need, you know, gun replacements and stuff too?
That'll be now. Which
Just
is every 10 years.
anything like that, anyone that would be retiring that's, you know, going to be needed replaced and stuff. So I think we need to kind of project out and take a look at what's coming down the road, not just what's standing in front of us immediately.
Okay, very good.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for the chief?
No, I just want to, Madam Chair, make a comment that I also play a role in this. I'm just being kind of quiet here. And what you know, my role is sometimes the liaison between the department heads and council. Because if I feel, along with them, with discussion, that there's something that we need, and you know, I'll help push for that too with them. And some of those things are the items that we did discuss tonight. So, and I think one of the things is a big item, and I'll just say it right now, and I think, and you did bring it up, is the increase for the employees, all the employees. Retention of employees right now is just as hard as getting new employees. So I think with that said, you know, I think we should talk about that, and I know Angela's gonna run the numbers on that.
Well, yeah, well, I mean, the numbers are kind of run.
1.75.
Yeah, it would be the same.
Might as well get it out there.
Same percentage.
1.75 is what I think we should.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll,
1.75, is that what?
correct, that mirrors the CBA.
Two are
You can
separate,
have-
but.
Yes,
Yeah,
but,
that's fine.
but yeah. So yes, that was a point I would bring up. Can we ever come up? Is
Yeah, that's
everyone
right.
done with Stan?
I believe so.
The only thing I have is, looking into getting another canine.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to
There is a
mention that.
grant out there, and also, the gentleman's name is Edward Pepe. He has a couple dogs for search and rescue. He does a lot with the canine. His, brother was killed on 480 last year, the year before that. A sign fell on his truck, and this past summer, he put a concert on, and he's donating to the police departments, to, I think it was 4 dogs, that, the area police department, so hopefully, get all that paper submitted, and, you know, we're one of the 4. It does pay for the dog, we would have to pay for the training. I did get a price from, our last, trainer, and it was like $13,800 and some for the new dog and the training. So if we got the dog, roughly said it was around $8,000, so we'd have to pay the 5 for the training with the officer to be certified through the state of Ohio.
Chief, is Sergeant Gervaisi still interested in
Yes.
maintaining that position?
If, it does come available in that, like we did in the past, and that, we'll have them submit a letter of intent, and then, I'll take the officers that are interested to Paul Shaughnessy, he's the trainer, and go with his recommendation.
And that usually comes with a, timeline fulfillment also, right? Like a 10-year commitment with the,
Yes. So, that's all I have.
I just want to thank Stan for constantly plugging away at grants as well, because you wouldn't have the radios without the grant. We just got a grant for, what was our other piece for?
Shannon too.
For
Shannon
free-
as well.
It was for the fingerprint machine and that.
Yeah, for our print machine for
Since
BCI.
17, I got over $30,000 in grant money, which we were able to purchase our tasers, our cameras, and the fingerprint machine, which was $15,700 and some dollars, which we only had to pay 10% out of. I just applied for another grant for next year for $57,000 and some dollars for updates on our body cameras, car cameras, and that when the officer pulls into the lower lot or into the garage, it automatically downloads all the data from the body camera and from the cruiser camera right into their system. This grant, if we get it, it's paid 100%. Mike DeWine is trying to get all the police agencies in the state of Ohio, either with body cameras or car cameras. That was submitted end of September. I probably won't hear anything until after the first of the year. So hopefully keep our fingers crossed. If we don't get all of it, we'll at least get a portion of it.
And Shannon was instrumental with the radios as the
In
mayor
the radios,
mentioned, so
we got
yes.
the grant for radio.
So thank
Shannon
you.
did a great job on that, so that's all I have.
great, thank you, Chief.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Madam Chair,
Thank you.
before the chief leaves, Madam Chair, just
Yep.
one more question about the K-9. RO did bring in some money, not that we're using that as a revenue
No,
source,
but
but RO did bring in some money
Correct.
from
Mhm.
drug busts and things like that. Do you recall that amount?
Not off the top of my head.
It was over $10,000, wasn't it?
I couldn't really,
Okay.
I'm not
All
really
right,
sure.
thank
I
you.
don't, thank you.
And there is grants that I know Sergeant Gervaisi was getting the food for the K-9 unit also.
Yeah.
Yes, he did,
And
he did.
special pricing on veterinary bills.
Okay.
Rob, you got 5 minutes.
I'll start before you walk up, if that's okay, with what we've discussed. All right, so when Rob and I met, top of our list, you know, and circling back to the event center really quick, we were just talking about the overtime involved, you know, in keeping with setups and things like that. So we've been trying, and Mary's been trying to be very efficient about setups, like for example, last week the women's club needed it 2 days in a row. She convinced them to have the same setup, so we didn't have to call service back in again on a Saturday. So just kind of keeping that in mind when you circle back as one of the costs for that. But big ticket items for Rob, dump trucks and a chipper potentially. And then increasing some of our building and land maintenance line items, because a lot of that falls in the main category that are Rob's. Even if it's event center, we do have a line we could start funding there separately, but so when we're doing any kind of maintenance to buildings and land, which we have between HVAC and various things here, that kind of falls under Rob's budget, so take it away.
Oh, you want me to start?
Go for it.
So, first off, I appreciate the opportunity to address the Finance Committee. I really do. Thankfully, you guys called me up here. And I think moving forward, it's good to know like where I started here. So, in 17, just so we're clear, I asked for a dump truck to maintain the streets. It was 5 years ago. This is the 5th time that I'm addressing a portion of the council or whatever. So this is the 5th time.
Hopefully it won't be the 6th time next year. Let's hope for that. Let's keep our fingers crossed.
You're saying for me to address the council?
No, yeah. You
Well,
just
your
don't know.
reappointment is up soon.
You just don't know, right?
So, but additionally, in 17, and coming from, I've been part of small business and maybe large business. In 17, we cut the service department budget by 18%. And we followed up in 2018, by cutting it an additional 12%, to total 30% over 2 years. And this is when I came up and I started acting as the street commissioner for you folks. And we were told, hey, stay lean a couple years, stay lean a couple years, stay lean a couple years. Well, like I said, it's the 5th time. And when I sent the quote to Angela, it's not for 1 truck, it's for 2. And I stated this, at what, I'm just giving you the heads up. I mean, the numbers are the numbers. But I'm giving you a heads up, that's what it's for. It's for 2 trucks. Forecasting, chipping is something that the residents love. Our chipper's going on 18 years old. We put over $7,000 into it last year. The chipper will be next. It's with, everything is, aged. We go into facilities, so that, that we can make by, get a chipper, get a couple dump trucks, we can make by. Go into the facilities, we need a roof. That was priority number 1. We kind of switched up priorities a little bit because the condenser went down across the way. So if we want AC next summer, budget about $45,000 to replace it. This is the number I have in currently. We're going to go out for more numbers.
That's for across the way, right?
That's just for across the way. That's where we're at with facilities. That's the big stuff. All the little stuff we've been managing on our own. And then I thought I'd just throw it out there, going off script a little bit, Angela. We can think about a summer help or a part-timer, it'd be great. That's all my.
If you're saying part-timer, I was just thinking about this the other day, in terms of the fact that we talked about event center. Part-timers would be great to come in and set up on the weekend, because then I'm not paying a minimum of 3 hours of overtime to regular service guys. So how many would you be looking at? And would you want them seasonal or year-round?
Well, I mean, ideally, I'd like 2. Like 2 part-time, ideally. Or a part-time and some allocation for summer help.
Rob, in the past, have you used, my understanding was you used some of the Parkers, the counselors,
Just to paint,
for small things?
What I did last year was, there's counselors that they were willing to work, and I couldn't take the guys off the chipper and the grass crew to paint fire hydrants, so I was able to pick them up for a few weeks.
Okay.
So yes, I did that last year.
So
And
that,
about how much would a new chipper be?
You're in the range of 50,000.
And the dump trucks are still around 180?
I think our bids came in
166,
at,
one was 167 was your bid.
and I just received the bid. George hasn't even reviewed that yet, but I needed something to get in front of you with, so.
Correct.
But yeah, so we're about 160.
And where I'm at with his bids, Valley Ford has actually put out there that we could potentially do municipal financing.
Correct.
5 years, one payment per dump truck, $36,112.32. So when you heard me say I'm gonna recommend we use that $118,000, that is pending my call back from the finance department at First National, which is who Valley uses. Because as we know, in the past, we've tried to finance things, we don't have credit. Not a bad thing, we haven't had to put it on credit, but we're not gonna come up with 170 grand to pay outright for a dump truck. So my hope is I can get an answer from him and have them run a soft credit check or something to say, hey, yes, you would qualify for this financing. Because that'll make the difference of whether or not we can do 1 or 2 trucks.
What exactly is the financing again, please?
The financing is $36,112.32 over a 5-year term per dump truck, so we're gonna pay roughly $13,000 in interest, which to me, on a truck that's gonna last that long and for that amount of money, as far as we've ridden these trucks out, I don't think that's extreme. And I don't see how else we're gonna get dump trucks.
36,000 is our payment?
That's our payment per truck, per year, for 5 years. One payment per year.
Chair Allen?
Yes.
I have a couple questions. So just want to be clear on the trucks, is it one truck that's 167 or?
One truck is 167.
And the other truck?
Would be the same.
Same, 2 trucks,
Oh,
right?
so
Yeah.
2
Same-
trucks
two
is
trucks,
167.
Same specs.
Each.
Okay.
Not that it matters, but what's the brand? Is it international? Who makes these?
Ford.
Ford.
It's a Ford
Are they
F-750.
Okay, just curious.
Okay. Then the other question I have for Commissioner Kalman is the typical, time for delivery, from order to delivery for a truck like this is generally, you have a ballpark with that?
Not in today's day and age. I believe her quote was for a spring build.
Yes.
It would be a 22,
We
it
would
would be a
see chassis.
2022 truck, and it would
Yep.
be a spring build.
It's actually a 2023 truck.
That's what I meant, sorry.
Chassis sometime in spring, not sure of equipment, I'll find out.
Yeah.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Are these the same size as our current big one? Is that what you're talking?
Yes.
Okay. So we have currently one big one, currently, and we have,
We have,
One's an antique or what's the?
the 2 Fords that we would be getting would be replacing a 1993 and a 1994 Ford.
I understand that. I'm talking about the size of our trucks.
Yes.
We have currently one large truck, dump truck.
2.
We have 2 large dump trucks?
Yes.
93.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. We have 2 of the
We
same
have
large.
three large dumps that maintain the streets, is what we have.
And they're all the same size truck?
Yes, they're over 26,000 pounds.
Okay, that's what I was asking. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Rob, once again, so you would prefer 2 dump trucks if we could, and the chipper would be about 50,000, 2 processable part-timers. AC for the community room is gonna be about 50,000, and we know the roof here was 400,000, and I don't see that happening next year. But if we could manage a dump truck, a chipper, and a part-timer,
2 dump trucks.
2 dump trucks, okay.
Yeah, we would have been in
We're-
deep trouble last week if it snowed.
They were calling for snow last weekend, and, which we got. And, we had what we call our newer trucks. One in Painesville and then one over at Main Line. We, the whole body pulled off of one. We got a turbo getting replaced on another. We're waiting for parts everywhere. So I had one 450 and one 1993 Ford that was gonna maintain this village. If we would've got hit, I would've been sweating. I mean, I was sweating as it was. So that's why, you know what, we're learning to live lean. We started it in 13 or 17, and we're getting pretty good at it. I'd forego a part-timer. I'd forego part-time help to make sure we have the proper equipment, is where I'm at.
Well, the proper equipment is of utmost importance. That's safety for you guys. So, and the $36,000 is just on one truck, right?
It's one
So it'd
per
be
truck,
72.
one payment
truck.
per truck per year.
Okay.
So, right, 72, if we can get financed.
If we can get financed. And anything else possibly off the top of your head in the next 5 years that you would be looking at? I know this right now is what you're looking at immediate, but is there something else that we should be forecasting for?
Yeah, we would be, I mean, I could put a more concise list together, but we would be looking for another small dump. The small dump maintains the upper lower lot here, maintains the community center. Again, the one we have is 7 years old now. That's our new one. So if we're forecasting the next few years out, we'd be replacing that one as well.
Okay, well, yeah, like I asked Chief, if you wouldn't mind, you know, thinking about it, putting a list together and stuff, just so we have what's coming up on the horizon. We have to start projecting further out than the immediate future. Does anybody else have any questions for Rob?
I have a question. Going back to the, community room, setting up for on a Saturday,
That's overtime.
and so how much is that?
3 guys at 3 hours minimum each.
Well, you call a guy in, it's a 3-hour minimum call, so I don't know what our hard costs are on
Or
a
it would
guy.
depend on the event and how many
But
we
you're
need,
about,
right.
you're about $75 a guy.
Times 3? You said
No,
three.
No.
3 hour, so, no.
So,
Oh, yeah, it's time and a half, so.
yeah, time and a half.
Yeah, about, maybe $1.25 a guy, so, about $125.
Well, there's definitely, the community room should be bumped up when you're doing the recreation.
I mean, it's for everything though. They got to set up in there too. So it's, if there's a weekend flip, if we're, if we're doing an event here, an event there, or wherever we're setting up, obviously if we have something just on a Saturday, then we know we can set it on Friday. So we're proactive about it. It's just that when we do have in between stuff, or when we have, our own organizations using it too, like you're paying them to come in and do that, so.
And we've had weekends where it's been a setup on a Friday and a Saturday and a Sunday.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, and to go along the way of, I know Mr. Spitznagel, crunched the numbers and said we're sitting about 50% of the time, the building, with our department, with everything else I'm covering, I feel like we're running crazy. I feel like
Exactly.
that thing's
It's
rented
not
out all the time, because it is
mainstream, all that kind of
constantly,
stuff.
and it's organizing to have guys here. It's rented Friday night, have guys here first thing Saturday morning, and then Sunday if something, I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot to keep up with, but I think we've managed so far without any big leaps.
Well, I would just like to thank Rob, because with the 50-plus club, I know when we meet on Mondays, there's holidays involved in that sometimes, and you always have it set up, before you leave on. I appreciate it.
Well, Rob, I would just like to say thank you for everything you've been doing leaner and leaner, and I appreciate what you've been trying to do, and certainly I would like to see you get everything that you need, especially for the safety of our employees.
Somehow we'll make it, I mean, we'll get it done, but it's just, that was a nervous moment last week when they're forecasting snow and I can't get answers or a truck back here.
Right.
I mean, so that's why the trucks are at the top of the list on the equipment side, so.
Okay.
Let me ask you a question which, in regards to that, because me and you've had this discussion. What would you do if that did happen? I know what I've been told, so I want to see if
I mean, I have a pretty good, the village has a pretty good relationship with Oakwood. and they would jump in and they'd help us out. Of course, any community
Will give us mutual aid.
would help us out, would help us out.
And the reason I bring that up is because it's important for us to have a backup plan, because that could happen anytime. Okay, it could happen with brand-new vehicles.
Well, and that speaks to what the chief is going
So,
through.
I don't wanna leave it out there that if something happens here, then we can also ask the county, we can ask the state. So we've had those discussions, we had that last week, because if it was a reality, what would we do? I mean, we don't want that to be, we'd rather maintain it with our own vehicles, but you always have to be prepared, no different than if our police are all tied up, we have mutual aid, the fire,
I haven't even seen it the
in
whole
the
time.
service department.
I was
So I just wanna
wondering-
make that point, because I know, Rob, you've kept good relationships with the other communities, and that's important, and we've helped them out. It's not just
Absolutely.
one way, we've helped them out when they're in that situation too, so.
If I may, I believe our residents are accustomed of maintenance of the roads at a different level.
That's
So
You're
with that being said,
absolutely
I think
correct.
that's why I was most nervous.
Right, I agree.
Because I guarantee I can round up help if it's gonna be the level that we're used to. I don't know
Right.
about that.
Well, I will tell you on that note, Rob, when when we had that snowstorm, my son was coming home from Bainbridge area, and he said, "Why are the roads so bad in Oakwood, but Walton Hills always keeps them clean?" So,
You're lucky sometimes. Got a great group of guys up there, that's fine.
I know,
That's true.
I know.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you,
Thank you
Rob.
for everything, yeah.
Okay, can I go next as a department head?
Sure, sure.
Okay, so, I'm not even gonna call this a wish list, I'm gonna call it a necessity. I need to have a part-time assistant. I have gone out to Rita to get a quote to at least absolve myself of having the taxes on my back, and that was about $75,000, which is more than pretty much the top range of pay that we would pay a tax administrator alone. And so I need someone who's gonna be who's got a finance background, or at least accounting, bookkeeping, potentially tax, but I've gotten to my breaking point. I definitely need to have a part-time assistant next year. Doesn't have to be full-time. They don't need to have benefits. But that's gonna be something on my wish list, because I cried when I saw the Rita quote, knowing that I can't even get that off my plate if I want to right now. So, keep that in mind. That's all that's on my wish list.
Angela, would that, it would be, you said an assistant, full-time, part-time?
It could be part-time. Part-time would be better than nothing. You know, we've got Mary here, but we're utilizing Mary for rec at the moment, and Mary doesn't have a finance background, so I get her to do some things, but it's a limited, you know, scenario.
Right.
And believing that I could take it all on, there have been a lot more little miscellaneous things that have dropped into my lap than I've seen in the past, and that's fine. But in order to, you know, we did the CBA so late, I've been behind all year, and ask the mayor, I mean,
Right, no.
It's hard to come in on a Monday morning sometimes when you're like, oh, I just want to get caught up. So I mean, I've come to that point that if we're going to keep doing the taxes here, and that's perfectly fine, we can, but someone's going to have to be here to help with some of the, you know, the accounting system, the data entry into the tax system, which again, Mary can do some of that, but, yeah.
Right.
So if I have, yeah, it's
And-
definitely gonna have to be something part-time.
And that would obviously be all year long, not just during
All
tax
year
season.
long, all year long. Yeah.
Chairwoman Allen?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question for Angela. So this part-time help for the finance department, are there one or more job descriptions already created for this? And I guess-
Yes.
And my second question is when you say part-time, we're talking less than 30 hours?
Yeah, we can go less than 30. If I had someone here 25 hours a week or even 20 hours a week, you know, because we could always vary that and stay within the part-time range depending on season. You know, tax season being busier, maybe they get up to 29. But yes, we could definitely stay under 30. And I would tweak what job descriptions we probably have out there, because obviously they're a little bit outdated because they're before I started, but.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm imagining there's probably something like an assistant tax administrator, assistant
So there
fiscal
would be
officer.
tax auditor, potentially, right, exactly. So, yeah, so in a perfect world, like Mary can help, and really anybody can be trained to help with data entry in terms of like withholding reconciliations. That's not rocket science. But actually looking at returns and inputting returns, And if possible, if I don't get someone to do that, that's fine, as long as I've got someone to do, you know, like the daily operations, because here I am doing heavy finance stuff, but also trying to still cut the checks and, you know, make sure we get our deposits done each week and
Right,
things
right.
like that. So just, you know, taking those smaller things off my plate. Vic Nagalo would say in the past, okay, now you know how to do it, now show somebody and don't do it. And I'm always like, well, but if that's my job, I don't want to pass it on. But now I'm ready, I need to pass some of it on. And, you know, so, and it would just be helpful to have someone that I know has got the finance background a little bit. It doesn't have to be a CPA. It just has to be someone who is potentially familiar with our accounting system. And so that way we can just hit the ground running for them to start taking up some of those day-to-day things that I can get off my plate.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just throwing it out, what about an intern from a
Yeah, I
college?
have thought about that. I will try to look at some interns as well. I mean, we've had some of our own residents, children coming to do internships if they needed it as a capstone project for high school and stuff. A lot of the time though, that was them more sitting and learning from me. And they might have been able to do a little bit, but it's, the hard thing with an intern is, will they know the accounting systems? And ours is very easy to use, don't get me wrong. It's not that it can't be taught, but knowing what a chart of accounts is and knowing what a revenue accounts versus, you know, just those basics. Because where I fail, I'm all about delegating, but where I fail now is that this year I was so inundated, I don't have time to stop and school somebody on every little thing. So the more they come in the door knowing, that's gonna be more beneficial to me.
And,
And in the past, excuse me,
Mhm.
the thing in the past, we've always had 2 people.
Oh, we had more than 2.
No, I was gonna say, one for income tax, then a fiscal officer, and then we had, an assistant,
We had,
or
we had,
a
yes.
part-time for
You
tax
had 3
revenue.
full-time when I got here.
Right.
Vic was part-time, I should
Vic
say.
was
but
part-time because he was shared with another team.
Vic, Katie, and Brad were here when I got here, and that was already kind of down to your minimum. And then Brad left. So I was hired at full-time because I was 30-plus hours. I wasn't hired at part-time, but, and so I did the assistant stuff in the tax audit until Vic left, obviously. Then I assumed the role of tax administrator because I had that background anyway. And then here we are today with all of it plus clerk of council all in my lap, which is fine. I know I'm the one who said, okay, I think I can do it all. I'm telling you, I
That's
can't.
okay, no, at least, no.
There's a lot more little miscellaneous stuff that comes up and that I've had to deal with, and a little bit of cleanup on the back end of things for both tax and finance, not gonna lie, so it would just, yeah.
And
Angela?
hopefully that's going to, no different, I see Rob left, if, I've said it in the past, if hopefully the redevelopment of the Ford plant is also gonna make both of those positions, the building department and our fiscal officer, even more busy with different things that come forward here. So, I mean, that would be a very good positive thing. But just, I would agree as mayor, I know Angela wanted to bring it forward, and I'm glad she did, but I would support that. There's no doubt that it needs to, and we'll expound on it a little more.
Sure.
I'm ready.
And everyone's here
In
is
our next
helpful.
couple meetings, expound on it a little more and have some more definitive numbers and what we can do.
Absolutely, and all of the employees here have offered, like, what do you need help with? But again, there comes those times when I can say, hey, I just need this filed, can you take it, can you run these copies, can you do this? But when I have to stop to show people, then it's a matter of, is it worth the time to stop what I'm doing for 3 days to get someone acclimated, or is it just keep going, keep going, keep going?
Angela,
So.
what is the pay range that position would?
Ooh, I don't remember
Do you-
exactly what that pay range is. I wanna say it starts at 16 and goes up to maybe 21 or 22, I don't know.
See, some of those that we have to look at are still in 260, the only we didn't.
They're in
approve them.
260,
So
no,
we'll have
nothing's
to
been
look.
updated in
But I
260.
mean, well, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, there's a position there
Right.
and there is a pay
There-
range for
Yeah,
it,
we
yes.
wouldn't have to create
Nothing,
a position.
no, it's
Right,
there.
We might have to change the range, if that's what you were.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
asking, yeah.
I don't
What
think
is
you'd
like
have to
going-
change the range
Maybe.
because the person would not come in any higher than the range.
I got
You
you.
get what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
so no, you wouldn't have to change it.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
did you mention something about Rita? They gave you a proposal?
I did. I sent things out to Rita for a proposal, and like I said, since it came back per year at roughly between 75 and 79,000, you know, we pulled from Rita back when Ford was still here because Rita had, number one, a horrible system at the time that was not super efficient. And they were billing us, you know, on a percentage, and we had a lot of income coming in from Ford on withholding, right? So we were paying out the wazoo for something we could do ourselves. So I thought, okay, let me go see where we stand with this now, if I were to move it and get it off my plate. But to pay them yearly is more than the top range of what a tax administrator hiring one separately would make.
I caution you, you hear it here, this is my last month or so. If you go to Rita, they're gonna lowball you the first time, saying 1%, 1.5% of your revenue, okay? And you're probably paying, you'll go up to 3 very easily after the next year. Once they get all your data, it's very hard to go back.
So I would
Okay.
say this.
Don't do it.
I actually have friends at Rita, which is how I kind of thought to like, maybe let's revisit this.
And we had to do our due diligence. to
But
do it,
also-
Revisit it, you have to, you wanna know.
Rita has so many more global resources to reach out. You know, we've been very nice and lenient to our residents, and we don't charge late fees or penalties, and quite frankly, there hasn't been a ton of time for anybody, even when Vic was still here, to go after people for collections, where that's where Rita can step in and say, hey, tell us what you wanna do. We can still say no penalties or interest and not have that charged if we want, that's our choice, but they can go out there and they can look at the federal return, boom, they've got access to it, 1, 2, 3. And so where I might be missing something for somebody, either a piece of info or a whole return, or they, you know, didn't send me everything, Rita's got that capability. So, I mean, I almost feel like they could do a lot of cleanup and get some more money in here potentially for us, but I'm not gonna say $1 million, but that's where I fall short, right? I stay caught up on what I
They
need
won't
to.
get you, they won't get you anywhere near what you can do yourself.
Oh,
What
I
you're
wouldn't say
gonna
that though, because that's where I kind of stopped, Gloria, like I'm
I know-
doing my daily
I
stuff.
was a tax
I'm-
administrator for 31 years. I have many friends in Rita, and I know how it works. So, well, how many tax returns do you get here in this small
We
community?
get quite a bit because we get a lot of business returns, Gloria. So even if I'm a business and I have to send you a return even if I'm a loss, right? So if I'm got anybody working that came through this community, even if I've got a loss for the year, I gotta send that, and then the tax administrator or whoever is working with them has to enter it. It's gotta be in there so that when they come back and they say, now we got a profit in your city, where's my NOL loss? So it doesn't seem resident-wise like there'd be a lot. Withholding is kind of easy peasy a little bit, it's more data entry. But when you get to all those net profit returns, I mean, anybody who's seen my office, I've got stacks and stacks on the floor. And a lot of those are, I put it aside because they don't owe us money, of course, and it's, you know, but they still have to be entered. So all of that data entry and knowing how to read those returns, those 1065s, those 1120s, 1120Ss, to know what you're looking for to put in,
Well, you
that's
have
where
to
the
have
that's where
somebody-
the bulk of the work is.
Yes, you have to have somebody that knows that.
Right.
But I did 18,000 residents with 2 people, just myself and one other.
And I don't have another though, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so, I mean, we need, whether it's,
You
and it
need
doesn't.
you need somebody in here. I
Right,
said it when she
yeah.
took the
Right,
job.
right,
It was,
that's-
it's too much to handle everything. You need somebody else. But if you go to Rita and this Ford plant explodes and you get revenue, they're gonna take a percentage of that. If you don't do it now, until that, at least that gets settled and you know how much money you're gonna work with. Just right now, they're asking between $75,000 and $79,000, more, double what you make. It's almost what the police chief makes. So, I caution you, because.
Well, that's why.
And people will not like Rita,
Um,
because when they got a problem, they call you and they talk to Angela. They got a problem with Rita, believe me, what they have to go through.
I
to
am in a
resolve
Rita
it.
city, so I'm super familiar, but I also know how efficient they are at collecting my money if I haven't paid them on my estimates. So it's kind of like a 6 and
Madam-
1/2 dozen of the other, right?
Madam
Yeah.
Chair, you know, when we changed from Rita, I was
Right.
here for that.
We did.
And Vic, Mr. Nagallo was able, now, of course, he had the physical resources. He was able to collect thousands of dollars more per year than what Rita was collecting from, license taxes, I believe, gas taxes, things like that, where Rita wouldn't even go after them.
Those
where-
don't even come through that, though. Those
It
come
wa-
through the
Well, it was
county and the state.
something that,
Right, right.
It was, like 2 or 3 different forms of taxes, and it was to the thousands of dollars a year. that we were collecting. And I could go back in my paperwork and
So that all
figure
comes
that
from the
out.
state, and the
No,
state
he-
does reconcile every.
Well, whatever it was, there was.
Whatever it
'cause
was,
we
we
had the numbers in
showed an
front of us, and
increase.
there was,
We
yeah, there
did
was
show
a
an
savings.
increase, because he went after it, where Rita would.
Yeah, I'm not sure, 'cause that's
Um,
really not reader related.
So, you know, we'll just have to look at the numbers. I agree you need help. My suggestion to you, I know we have several residents requesting, you know, public records requests all the time, and we want to be open, we want to be transparent, and we are as much as we can. I'm asking you publicly now, because I've sent the email, and I've even sent a draft form letter type of thing. If it's not a valid request, it's not a valid request. Don't spend your time compiling information because you're telling us you don't have the time to do that. You need to be working on your work. And let us take the heat for not compiling an invalid public records request. Now, when you have time to do it, absolutely, fill any request you get, who cares? That's what we're here for. But if you don't have time, don't be filling, don't waste your time filling, compiling information for public records request. And for anybody who, out there in the audience, a public records request, a valid public record is one that we are dealing with right now. For example, this Form 52, that's a public record, it's compiled. If somebody came in and said, Angela, I want you to give me this information on this and put it in this fashion or whatever, that's not a valid public records request because that document does not exist. So we have to be careful if we're saying that we don't have the time to do our normal job, to be sidelined by things like that. And again, we want to be transparent, open, and I'll come in and help you compile anything you want. If there's a public records request or whatever, I will help. But you know, I've cautioned that before, that we need to get the village business done too.
I do usually reiterate that for everyone. For anyone asking, if it's something I can compile pretty quickly, I do reiterate though that it has to wait until I'm done with whatever's priority ahead of it.
You're
so.
very good at
I try.
getting, you know, those requests filled.
Angela, I've been told that the chat is disabled again.
Yeah, it's been disabled. I was wondering why I couldn't see it, so it's been disabled, but we also need to make a new link for the next meeting, so, because that other one linked to the first meeting somehow, and it's gone.
So, and I also had a resident ask me, what if Rob applied for the diesel mitigation grants?
Oh, so let me back up since he left. Rob and I did speak about that yesterday. He was going to apply again, and they're kind of being a little more stingy and a little more stringent on the requirements. So we can certainly ask him and get a more definitive answer, but that was the reason that we were not in the process of doing that again as we were at this time last year.
Right.
Okay, well, the point was made by Stephen here saying that if we apply for 50%, then we can at
Yeah,
least possibly get
We
one
knew
vehicle.
that. We knew that last year,
Right.
having gone into it. But there's a reason that Rob was putting off even applying for it. So yeah, we'll get the 100% answer out of him again, but we just talked about that yesterday. And that's not necessarily on the horizon right now.
All right, great. Does anybody else have any other questions for Angela in regards to finance?
No, I have a question, Madam Chair. So we're gonna have 2 COW meetings coming up, okay?
Yes.
And I'm sure we'd want, finance in those meetings, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So that would be one of the agenda items.
And
Okay.
finance I will not personally be here on the 14th. My kids have their big TSO concert for orchestra that night, so I will not be able to be at that meeting. I
So
will
we
have
gotta
things
get-
ready ahead of time for you.
Yeah, we'll get things,
First meeting, I will have things for you to start looking at for budget and everything mapped out that everyone's asked for this evening. And then I will not be available that night.
and we talked about that, and I said, well, we'll get through it, and then we can always have a COW meeting before the council meeting too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if there's other questions or other things, you know, we'll have that time in between. So we're slated for 3 meetings you know, in December there. So I think we'll be fine.
All right, great. Is there anything else for finance? I have a motion for adjournment.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, and we are adjourned at 7:22.
Okay.
Okay, why don't we just take a couple seconds here,
Yeah, I
and
gotta
everybody,
redo this
before we
meeting.
start the